If there's one thing that fandoms have in common, it's that fans have opinions. And sometimes those opinions can be a little spicy. I asked critters in my Discord, which you should jump into by the way, to give me their hot takes about Critical Role so that I could talk about them, and there are some really fun ones in here. Quite a few of these hot takes are quite spoilery, so I guess just keep that in mind. Alright, kicking us off with a bang is Essek is not that hot.
Mordenkainen is rolling in his grave!
I watched Mighty Nein. It was the first campaign that I watched, but I was sort of behind catching up, and so I think I missed out on a lot of the like massive fandom shipping situation with Caleb and Essek. Personally, I don't find Essek that hot, but I think that's because I am married to a man, but I'm also very attracted to women, and so I think I save a lot of my fictional crushes for women. Not talking about any woman that has like completely taken over my life right now in Baldur's Gate. What are you talking about?
I adore you, you know.
But seeing firsthand the sort of like shipping dialogue with, or discourse with Imogen and Laudner, I can only imagine that the shipping discourse around Caleb and Essek would have been wild. So yeah, Essek is not that hot. Let me know. Do you think Essek's hot? The best thing Mollymauk did for the Mighty Nein was die. I don't know if this is a hot take or if it's just like true. Brutal. But I mean, there's no denying that Mollymauk's death led to the culmination of campaign 2. Like without Molly's death, we wouldn't have gotten Lucian and we wouldn't have gotten all of those things. I mean, maybe we would have, but it just feels like Matt took that opportunity and absolutely ran with it. And also, like, we wouldn't have gotten Caduceus. Like, I like Molly, but Caduceus has my whole soul and being, and so I could not imagine the Mighty Nein without Caduceus. Okay, the Underdark arc in campaign 1 shouldn't be skipped. This person then goes on to say that there are a lot of really great moments and guests that you miss if you skip that. So if you're not aware of sort of like the discourse around this, a lot of people recommend that if you're starting campaign 1 for the first time, that you should skip the first arc, which takes place in the Underdark, and head straight to the Briarwood arc, which sort of starts around episode, like if you really want to start at the beginning of it, it's sort of, I think it's around episode 25 or so. That seems to be fairly consistent advice that I've seen given. And the main reason for that is that campaign 1 starts in the middle of the story anyway, so if you skip a little bit of the first part of the stream, it's not like you're sort of jumping in the middle where you are, but like you're already doing that anyway. And also there's a lot of uncomfortableness and awkwardness with Orion Akaba, who played Tiberius Stormwind in the first 27 episodes of Critical Role. And so by skipping those first 27 episodes, or even if you start a little bit before that, you're kind of brushing over a lot of that stuff. I will agree though, there are some really fantastic moments in that early arc. There are also some moments that I really don't like. I find it really hard to enjoy Vox Machina from the very beginning, but there are some really fantastic guests. Like one of my favorite guests is Felicia Day playing Lyra. I loved Lyra. I thought she was fantastic.
I've never had a friend before. This is so great.
You've got Mary Elizabeth McGlynn in there. You've got Will Friedle, Will Wheaton. So there is some really, really fun moments. I think you could probably get away with skipping through parts of the first arc if if that does bother you, that sort of conflict that seems to be happening at the table, or that is happening at the table. You could kind of skip through or watch some highlights. But yeah, definitely check out some moments from the first arc. Ludinus is actually doing the good and right thing, and Bell's Hells are the villains of this story. Well, I don't know if I would call them the villains of the story, and I really don't think Ludinus is doing the right thing. I don't think the gods should be devoured by some eldritch being that we don't know what it is. I just don't feel like that's a great idea, even if some of the gods are a little shady or don't necessarily have mortals' interests at heart. However, I will say Ludinus is doing the right thing for the story, and I think it's fantastic, and I love a big bad villain like that, so I guess that's where I agree with you. The character dynamics would be better if they all made their characters together rather than in small groups or separately. And I am gonna 100% agree with this. I think there is a lot of fun to be had in characters and players meeting their characters for the first time at the table. It certainly does lead to some really fun moments. However, I will say it can lead to some party inconsistencies or just a feeling of the party not quite being cohesive. And I think a really fantastic example of a really super cohesive and well-networked party is in EXU Calamity. And Sam did talk about, I think in the wrap-up for their campaign, that it was the first time that he had made a character with the whole group, not with just, so in Critical Role, they'll sometimes do pairs or threes, like they'll do small groups where they make their characters together. And you can really tell that they made them all together in EXU Calamity, and that's what gave us so many juicy inter-party moments. And there were still heaps of secrets, like there are still plenty of things to be discovered about the characters, but we're sort of starting on a stronger foot. I like seeing that in Dimension 20. I believe they often make their characters together. I think it could be a really big improvement if Critical Role did that more often, but obviously they enjoy doing it the way they're doing it, so that's fine. It's their game, they can do that. I do feel like I want to caveat every opinion I have about Critical Role with like, this is just my opinion, but of course, like, I don't care that they do it differently because it's their game. Okay, coming in hot. Imogen and Laudna should have stayed friends. This does feel like a divisive topic. Some people were absolutely thrilled to see Imogen and Laudna come together, and others were disappointed that they didn't maintain a more platonic friendship. I definitely think there is a lot of beauty in portraying very close, intimate platonic relationships. I think the sort of lines between romance and friendship sometimes are drawn very clearly when I don't always think they need to be. Like, I think you can romance your friends in a platonic way. But I also agree with the opinion that it is great to see lesbian representation, queer representation in the show, and I love to see that. All right, next we have campaigns are mostly filler, and you can get the plot from YouTube clips. Okay, so as someone who has done YouTube clips, yes, I agree.
Groundbreaking.
I actually do generally agree that most of the campaign is filler, but I want to preface that by saying I don't think filler is like a bad thing or is unentertaining. I think some of the most funniest moments in Critical Role have been filler.
Fish market?
It is my favorite terrain.
Maybe I should just excuse myself.
But there are also like a lot of filler just in terms of waiting for people to decide what they're going to do in combat, like adding up damage and things like that. Like those kinds of things do end up stretching out and eating into a lot of time of the show. This might be my hot take, but I honestly think Critical Role could stand to do with like maybe just a teensy bit of editing, which I know is kind of controversial because a lot of people would hate that for Critical Role. But for example, Dimension 20 does edit out some of the moments where, someone is just trying to add their damage up or things like that. A lot of podcasts do that as well. And I think it does just kind of smooth the flow a little bit. It probably would feel a lot more disjointed with Critical Role because the camera is always on, like the cameras don't change, whereas in other shows, the camera is switching back and forth so you can hide over those edits quite easily. Or of course, if you're listening to a podcast, then you just you don't even realize. But I think, yeah, if you do want to kind of catch up on the events of Critical Role and you don't want to invest hundreds and hundreds of hours into watching 4-hour-long episodes, because to be real, that is a lot of time that some people just don't have. I think it is okay to just watch some recaps or some clips to get the main kind of story. Everyone enjoys things in a different way. Keyleth and Vax after death is so weird. Don't at me. Yes, well, luckily these are anonymous, so nobody is going to at you directly. I will say, I think that it is not healthy to be super angry and upset about something 30 years after it happened. And I will also say, I haven't lost a significant other. I haven't lost a very close family member. I mean, obviously I've lost my grandparents, but that's kind of expected, it's a part of life. It's not an unexpected death of a family member. So I'm saying this wholeheartedly understanding that I don't know what it's like. I haven't been there myself, but I think Keyleth should move on. And Vax is not helping by just hanging out as a raven by her window every day. That's not helping. What if she met some nice druid down in the tavern, and then she tries to bring him back, and then Vax is just hanging out there? It's not cool. I do hope that we get some kind of resolution for these two at some point, even if it's just an acknowledgement of it's time to move on, baby. It's been 30 years. Come on. Veth should have left the Mighty Nine. Ooh, this is a hard one because I think this is something that Sam genuinely did struggle with in the campaign of how do I resolve Veth's feelings about wanting to be with her family versus keeping her on an extremely dangerous adventure. And I think he actually did a really great job of it. And Veth is probably my favorite character out of all the Critical Role characters because I feel like I can relate to her so much, not because I'm going on dangerous adventures, but because as a mother, and I think a lot of mothers experience this, there's so much pressure from society to be, you know, what is considered a good mother, and that kind of push and pull between wanting to be home with your family and caring for them, wanting to go out and explore your passions, your interests, your career, you know, and that kind of push and pull between those facets is something that I have just really felt so strongly. And so I really related to Veth's story in terms of her struggling with that and feeling like she had changed as a person from the mother that she was, and wanting to explore other sides of herself, but also staying true and staying, you know, being a part of her family. So personally, I really loved seeing that struggle. I do think, though, it would have made perfect sense for Veth to leave, and I think the reason that she didn't is just because Sam didn't want to be that guy again, you know? Like, he didn't want to do that to us again. I think Sam generally is just good at making characters that, like, have no reason to be with the party. Imogen has major main character syndrome. And I think this person means that in a negative way. Main character syndrome being that they're acting like the main character, even though they're in a group of people. And I think that that is actually true, but I don't think it is because Laura is making it so. I think Matt is clearly building a whole story based on Ruidus, which Imogen has a very strong connection to. So I think Laura seems to have been trying to take a back seat in terms of that stuff in the campaign, along with like Liam. It's just like obviously not worked because the crux of the story is really tied to Imogen. I think it's always such a hard thing when you have a large group in a party about trying to balance all those different roles and those different stories. And, you know, sometimes it is going to feel like one person is the main character, but then eventually that person will probably sit into the background as someone else is going to come forward and the story is going to focus on them. I will admit, I don't know how that's going to work as well given the overarching theme that we have for campaign 3. I personally would love to see more of those individual stories. I really enjoyed that in campaign 2, how for almost all of the characters we got like an arc and a quest that was related to that person's story, and I really like those kind of individual stories. So I would love to see a bit more of that rather than kind of like more of a main character. We've seen enough of Delilah. Delilah is the character that just will not quit. I think Delilah is such a fun villain, and I am very excited that she is like back in some capacity, but I also understand the frustration of like, Delilah again, you know. I think we see that so many in different TV shows where you're like, this guy again, didn't he die? No, he didn't die. It was actually a mythical thing that happened that brought him back. Oh no, he didn't really explode in the building. I do hope that she is going to get some kind of end resolution at some point rather than just sort of being this perpetual bogeyman that's just always coming back all the time. Hopefully we'll see like a definitive end to Delilah at some point. Critical Role would be improved by on-screen character stats and visuals. Yes, I totally agree with this. I would love to see visuals on the screen representing characters' health, maybe specific magic items, what they do, maybe certain class features. I would love, love, love that. As someone who is very easily distracted, the more things going on the screen that can keep my attention, the better, especially during combat. I find combat very, very difficult to follow just because my brain turns all of the sounds that come out to just... I would love to see some of those things just sort of like displayed there for us. But, you know, I also recognize it's normally a 4 to 5 hour long show. It's a lot of post-production work to do, especially if you have a short turnaround. Like, it seems like Critical Role has a relatively short turnaround, which I totally understand, but personally, yes, I would love to see that. Bell's Hells isn't a good name for the group, and Bertrand wasn't important enough to the group to be named after. Oh, ow, poor Bertrand. I disagree. I like Bell's Hells. I think it's a fun name. I think this campaign has probably been the campaign that has had the most pressure about what name they were going to choose. It felt like the Mighty Nine came along really like naturally. And at the time, I thought that was a really silly name, and now I really love it. Whereas I think campaign 3, there was just like so much pressure, and the cast kept referencing too of like, oh, we need to think of the name. We need to make sure the name is right. And so I think that just led to so much anticipation, which is inevitably is going to lead to some disappointment for people who didn't like it. I will agree that Bertrand didn't seem to have a huge impact on the group, but you know, he was kind of the cornerstone that brought them all together. So I get that. I mean, I think Treshy was probably a little bit more fundamental in their group creation, but Bertrand will do. I liked Bertrand. I was sad when he died. There has been more metagaming in campaign 3, especially in combat, to the show's detriment. Oh, you know what? I'm gonna come out here and say I disagree with this hot take. Is this a hot take? I don't know. Do people feel like there's too much metagaming? I actually would like them to metagame a little bit more sometimes, especially during combat. I don't know. I think there is some value to that about really trying to stay in the character in those moments, but I also think there's a lot of fun to be had in being tactical and strategic based on like the information that's in front of you. Like I'll give one example here that really does bother me. Most of the rules things do not bother me at all because it's like whatever, it's a game, they can play it how they want. But I will say the thing that bothers me is when they ask the dungeon master, is he within 60 feet? And Matt will respond, you don't know. And I'm like, well, we do know. Like, there's a map right there. If they got up and counted the squares, they would be able to work it out. We're playing on a map to represent the physical space. It would know if it was within 60 feet. So that's like kind of one concrete example. It's okay to like talk and plan a little more. I do wish sometimes they would plan in between sessions. Like, it drives me crazy when they spend 2 hours planning a combat or an encounter and then we get to it and of course like it goes out the window straight away and it's like, well, you know, this could have been an email. And finally, Robbie should have stayed as a permanent party member. Again, is this a hot take or is this just true? I totally agree. I know that 8 players is a lot. It's a lot of people to manage. Robbie was fantastic though. I feel like he was such a great addition to the group. He really helped gel the group together, I think, and I just love Dorian and I would love to see him back again. But I do think he would have been absolutely fantastic as a permanent party member. He just really fit in so well with everybody and I think the fans loved him and you know, who knows, maybe one day we'll get him as a permanent party member. I think that would be fantastic. Okay, well, I hope you've enjoyed this very lighthearted video discussing some Critical Role hot takes. Please give me your hot takes in the comments. Maybe I can do this again. I just want to remind everyone though that this is just all in good fun. If you don't agree with someone's hot take, that's okay. Just like be kind and respectful in your discussions, please. Be nice to each other, please. That's all I'm trying to say. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe and hit the like button. It does really help tell YouTube that my videos are good and therefore will show them to more people. And if you want to take a little walk down memory lane to some of the most memorable Critical Role moments, you can check out a video where I did just that right here. Bye!